Hello everyone, welcome back. This lecture is going to take a look at an introduction to the humanities and provide a bit of an overview for the class and what to expect. By way of introduction here's the agenda of what this lecture will be covering. We'll take a look at a short film entitled Bartholomew's Song, and this will give us an overview of what we do within the humanities and give us a sense of why the humanities are important. And so part of today's lecture is me going to be making an argument for the humanities and why it's important to study it as part of your general education requirements. Then I'll give you a bit of an overview, and we'll end with Hugh Nibley's Brigham Young as Educator, and we'll take a look at some of those ideas of what I want you to be able to get out of that and to think about as you go through that particular article. Just to set the stage for today, I want to share with you a quote that was given by a professor in a law school. And as he was entering law school for the first day of the semester of the fall term, he takes a look out and sees a bunch of law students. Generally, law students are those that are going to be very diligent about their studies and very focused. And he records his thoughts about what he sees in the classroom. And here's what he says. He says, "The auditorium is crowded. It's the beginning of classes in the first year of law school. The students are there, a little slow to get started, but determined to take notes, to underline, to darken page after page. There's no ambiance of disorder, no spirit of rebellion. These students of the new century are light years from earlier generations." And just stopping there for a second, you can talk to your parents and your grandparents, talk about some of the chaos that went on in colleges during the 60s and 70s. Colleges today are peaceful in comparison. They are without political passions. They accommodate themselves to the rules of the game. They are imposed to the rules of the game that are imposed on them. They are well behaved and they are nice. By all appearances, these are peaceful times for professors, right? So he establishes this sense of, the academic environment that we're dealing with today is very different from what it used to be. And in a lot of ways, it's good. And then he's going to take a look at, in a lot of ways, there's some negativity that kind of is teased out in the college atmosphere today. And I want you to be aware of it and to think about why that it's there. All things have their opposites. And so for every good thing, there are some negative effects that come with it. And he says in the second paragraph some of the problems that many students face today. He says, "And yet I sense a distinct sullenness in the atmosphere. The students are there under orders. They take down the words, but they are not excited by the subjects they are studying. They lend part of themselves because they feel obligated to do so, but in their deeper selves, they are absent. At the slightest digression, their attention is immediately elsewhere," right? And this entering into surfing the web or doing, text messaging, whatever the case may be, filling the time, can't, the inability to just kind of think and to process, right? Having to constantly race to other things. As soon as the students have the feeling that I am departing from the specific framework of the class, and thus from what relates to the examination, I lose them. They're gone. If I should happen to interrupt the regular flow of a lecture by expressing an interest in a certain book, I sense in their attitude a latent indifference. And so as we think about the college classroom today, right? A lot of people are there and they're going to follow the rules of the game. But the problem that we see within the classroom, or at least what he sees and reflected here, and I've kind of noticed in my own experiences in the college classroom, is that a lot of sense that there's no kind of sense of desire to be there. No excitement for learning, no excitement to do the work and to learn and grow. It's as though people are there just to get through the motions, to go through the experiences. But in their deeper sense, their deeper selves, they're hollow, right? And I want you to think about if that applies to you or if it applies to people you know and why that might be the case, right? To kind of think a little metacognitively, right? Think about why we think or see the world that way. I want to just kind of make another argument to think about why we do things within the gen ed. And a lot of times what I find is that some students come to campus and they say, I just want to study, I'm going into engineering, I just want to take engineering classes, or I'm studying biology, I just want to take biology classes. Why do I have to study different things, right? Or different ways or different approaches? And I wanted to talk about the theory of multiple intelligences that Howard Gardner argues, right? And this idea was developed by Howard Gardner, and it suggests that there are different types of human intelligences. And one person can excel in one and struggle at another. For instance, someone can be really good with numbers but struggle with sports, or vice versa. I want you to look at the descriptions below and determine which intelligence is your strength. And then we're going to if we would do this in class, we would share, right, with your neighbor. We probably can do this in the discussion boards. Which is your strength and why that is your strength, right? So just kind of going through them. There's the naturalistic, loves animals, plants, nature, understands the natural world. These tend to be biologists or conservationists, and just kind of going in a clockwise fashion. Linguistic, this excels in words, languages, and poetry. This would be poets and writers. The visual or spatial learners or intelligence excels in shapes and design, graphics, and visualization. These will be designers and engineers. There's musical intelligence, excels in performing and composing music. These will be singers, musical composers, or performers. Interpersonal would be ability to organize people, groups, activities, social relationships. These will be leaders and social workers. Intrapersonal, that means inter means outer, intra means inner. The ability to understand one's inner feelings and to have self-realization and to know about the oneself, right? This will be philosophers and clergy. Or the logical, excels in math, logical thinking. Bankers and accountants would be generally people that gravitate to that intelligence. And then kinesthetic. Kinesthetic means motion. Excels in performing sports, physical activities. These will be actors and athletes. And so I just want you to think about which one is your intelligence. Which one do you gravitate towards? And then we're kind of come back and think about whether it's valuable to be able to diversify our intelligence and have more than one, right? Or to have many of them, to be well-rounded, right? So that's the kind of thought I want you to think about. With that, I wanted to turn to a short film entitled Bartholomew's Song, and it's going to be a humanities-esque kind of film, and so it's going to be a little bit different. It's kind of a dystopian type film. But the main thought that I want you to get out of this is, what are the main ideas? I want you to think about, what is Bartholomew? That's the main character that you're going to see. What is his life like before he encounters the recorder? And you'll see that in the film. And then what is his life like? How did it change, right? How did the recorder's interaction with the recorder change his life?
Place component A on component B. Place component A on component B. Attach component A to component B with component C. Q3 defective. Attach component A to component B with component C. Place component A on component B. Proceed. Place component A on component B. Attach component A to component B with component C. Proceed. Q4 defective. Component A on component B. Attach component A to
Bartholomew 416.
Reset to position 1. Place component A on component B. Attach component A to component B with coordinates. Proceed.
Okay, that was Bartholomew's Song. A bit of a twist of events there that you probably didn't see coming. I like this particular photo from the film when Bartholomew is sitting in his cell or his kind of quarters, wherever he kind of sleeps, and he lays down as he's kind of thinking about what this all means and how to piece it together. And he lays down and his head is replaced by the recorder, and for so long of Bartholomew's life, he's been just a machine, part of this, this factory process of creating these suction cup elements. But here we see him becoming a different type of machine, right? He's kind of transforming into the machine of the recorder to do something different. To be able to create something for himself, to do for himself. And so it's kind of an interesting change within the film where he becomes less of an object to be acted upon and more of an object to act. Even though mainly he's just singing the song that he's learned from the recorder, but now he's kind of learning to act and to think for himself. I also like this quote at the bottom by the writer John Murray. He says, "When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe." And I think that quote sums up a lot of what we do within the humanities. We're looking for connections. We're looking for meaning, right? Rather than just watching a film like Bartholomew's Song or whatever the case may be, and just, looking for entertainment, we're looking for meaning. What's it mean? What significance? What understanding are we to derive from it? And so with that, I want you to think about these 4 questions in relationship to Bartholomew's Song. And some of these you might see in the discussion board for this week. And we might talk a little bit about them as we begin our Zoom 2 session next week. I want you to think about, what was Bartholomew's life like prior to finding the recorder? What did he do? How did he respond? What was his environment like, right? How would you describe his environment, his mood, his relationships? And what we think about within the humanities as we start to analyze whether it's a film or literature or music, whatever the case may be, we start to think about the reasons why an artist puts things together. So for instance, in this film, we're thinking about the color choices. We're thinking about the camera shots and the angles. And thinking about the walls, the mise en scène, the setting, that the environment that he's in. Then question number 2, I want you to think about, what did the recorder, or how did the recorder change Bartholomew's perspective? Right? How did it change his outlook? Why do you think these changes occurred? What do you think it was about the recorder that changed him? Right, so just kind of think about what it is, what's causing that change within him. And why do you think Bartholomew killed the announcer in the end, right? That kind of plot twist, that was kind of out of nowhere. What do you think the argument of the director is? Do you think he's arguing that music is evil? Or is he arguing something else, right? What is it about the recorder? Is Bartholomew processing this information as he touches the speakers of the recorder and then touches the speakers in his workspace? What connections is he making between those sounds, and why would he do that, right? What connections is he making about being defective and what the term defective means within the context of the film? And so then, as we kind of pull back and think about this from kind of a bird's eye view, what do you think the director's argument is? Right? What do you think he's suggesting, and how what kind of stance is he taking, right? How is he trying to understand the world or the environment that Bartholomew is in? Thinking about this in relationship to the humanities, right? The national trend for the humanities, whether it's the humanities in general, or whether it's whether it's languages or literature or music, whatever the case may be, tends to be defunded currently. You have a lot of efforts out there to try to take the arts out of schools or out of the community. And the argument here is that we don't really want to, quote unquote, waste resources on this. We don't want to waste resources to teach people about the arts within their environment. We don't want to waste the funds of public funds in our communities. We need to preserve these resources, right? And I want you to think about why that is, and then what's going to be maybe the unintended consequence of that, right? The former Governor Rick Scott of Florida said about the humanities and liberal arts, quote, "If I'm going to take money from a citizen to put into education, then I'm going to take that money to create jobs. So I want that money to go to degrees where people can get jobs in this state. Is it a vital interest of the state to have more anthropologists? I don't think so." Right? And so he's suggesting what we mainly need to invest in is employment. And although that is, a vital resource and important, what might be the unintended consequence if we're missing the arts, if we're missing music? What happens within Bartholomew's song when you create an environment that's completely void of any art or ideas or music? What's going to happen, right? Think about, what is he arguing? What should education look like according to Governor Bevin, and what are the unintended consequences? Or former Governor Matt Bevin of Kentucky said that he wanted to eliminate state funding for the liberal arts, and he said, quote, "There will be more incentives to electrical engineers than French literature majors. All the people in the world that want to study French literature can do so. They're just not going to be subsidized by the taxpayer." And so what the argument here is, to take tax dollars away and from the arts. And so what that means is, if you're going to study literature and language or the humanities, you're going to have to pay a higher sum for that class than electrical engineers. And so that the idea is to create incentive for those to go into electrical engineers or science and technology and things like that, which are great again. But again, what's the unintended consequences of not being able to have access to that side of the human intelligence, right? What's kind of ironic about Matt Bevin is that he actually has his degree in Japanese literature. And so it's kind of interesting that as a governor, he has a different mindset about how education should be, even though it contrasts his own education. And so I don't know how he reconciles that. I don't know if he experiences any cognitive dissonance within that. But again, what is he arguing? What should education look like according to Governor Bevin? And these are some of the social trends that we generally see. We see that mindset, and this spills over into students that are coming in to study within the humanities, and they start wondering, why do I have to be here? Why can't I just go get that electrical engineering degree or that science degree or that law degree, whatever the case may be? Why do I need to study other things, right? And again, what are some unintended consequences to removing languages, literature, art, history from universities and only focusing on employment, right? And focusing on what's going to quote unquote make money. And thinking about this in relationship to multiple intelligences, right? Is there value in someone that might have that kind of interpersonal intelligence, but then trying to expand that into more of a musical, or someone that's kinesthetic and moving towards a naturalistic kind of intelligence? Is there value within our communities to have people that have a wide range of intelligence, or do we just want people that have a laser-like focus on one thing, right? Here's another question for you as you think about what to expect out of college and what to expect out of this class and your general education courses in general. Would you rather your college classes focus on teaching you what to think or how to think? Which approach better teaches students to act for themselves? And so as we think about this in relationship to Bartholomew's song at the very beginning, were they told how to think, or were they told what to think and what to do? Right? And what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be someone that's acted upon, or that's has the ability, the freedom to act, right? And so something to think about, right? As we think about, I just want to get through this so I can get a job. Well, there might be some elements that we need to have these deeper critical and creative thinking abilities to expand our horizons a little bit more. Martin Luther King Jr. said the following. He said, quote, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education." And so intelligence is extremely important. It's important to have that content knowledge. But we also need to think about how our knowledge applies to others, how it relates to others, and what are the effects of that knowledge. And that's where really the humanities comes into play. And Buddha said the following. He says, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." Right? So that idea of becoming powerful to act for yourself. And just a scripture here to kind of to augment this, in D&C section 88, verse 118, it says, "And as all have not faith, seek ye diligently and teach one another words of wisdom. Yea, seek out of the best books words of wisdom. Seek learning even by studying, also by faith." And so it's interesting here that we can learn from books, that not necessarily just general conference talks and scriptures, those are great, and we can gain great wisdom and insight and inspiration from those, but we can also gain ideas and inspiration from the literature, from the ideas that surround us, right? And what do studying things like the humanities, according to D&C, what do studying things like the humanities, why are they important? What do they offer? And here's what President Hinckley says. He says, "The study of humanities gives an aspect of living that is essential. You need technology, you need the professions, you need all those things, but we need the heart also. The humanities speaks to the heart, men's aspirations for the good and the beautiful." And I think we see that within Bartholomew's song. As Bartholomew starts to change, he gains that kind of heart, that ability to feel, and the desire then to share with others, rather than just kind of dimly going about his day, just kind of walking in line, not really excited about his work or life. He just kind of follows, the group follows orders. And then when he gains that kind of inspiration, gains that heart, he's no longer walking at the back of the pack. He's now leading and running and looking forward to getting home and to doing something beyond his work. Here's another quote by Elder Ballard. He said, "Inspired art speaks in the language of eternity. Teaching things to the heart, the eyes, and the ears can never understand." And so I want you to think about, why do you think the arts are so important to living a happy and abundant life, right? What do they offer? What can they do for you specifically as an individual? How can they benefit you in your life, right? The humanities is a study of human life and investigates previous and current insights into the human condition, asking questions like, what is the meaning of life? What is human nature? What does it mean to be human, etc.? And we're going to take a look at that in our next lecture. Completing this course will give students a better appreciation of our world, our culture, and the values that we as humans share, right? How are we connected to one another? And with that, I wanted you to read Brigham Young as Educator by Hugh Nibley. And I want you to think about that. We would do this in class if we were meeting face-to-face, but we'll do some of this on the discussion boards, and it might spill over to our Zoom discussion for week 2. But I want you to think about, right, why is a liberal education so important? What does Nibley indicate happened to past civilizations who took education for granted? And why did Brigham Young desire the early saints to exercise their minds and get educated? So I want you to think about that as you read through or listen to. There's also kind of an audio clip that you can listen to if you don't want to read it. You can listen to it. I want you to think about these questions. I want you to find an answer to them. And then I want you to think about how that applies to you in your life, right? Just to kind of close here in the last few minutes, I want you to think about how many hours do you think the average student in the United States spends reading for classes with a 15 credit hour load. And 15 credit hours is kind of the average credit hour load for full-time students. And just to give you a sense of this, you're supposed to spend about 3 hours outside of class for every 1 hour inside of class. And so that means if you're taking 3 credit hours, you have to just multiply that by about 3 hours, right? And you should get the average, right? So that should be the average. And just kind of think about that, right? I want you to think of it, is it 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, right? Or less than 5 hours a week? The answer to this, though, is 15. So that means for every 1 hour of class, they're spending 1 hour outside the class, right? So that's kind of something to think about as you approach your education. Where are you in this spectrum? And my question is, what are these students around the country doing to fill their other hours, right? They could be working, right? They could be socializing, whatever the case may be. But the other question is, what are they missing? Right? Without studying, what aspects of growth are they missing as a result of that? And so thinking about priorities, I mean, I know it seems like right now you're busy and you have a lot going on in your life, and I sympathize with that and I agree with that. And I don't want to depress you with that, but to be honest with you, you are the least busy you will ever be in your life. If you think you're busy now, wait till you are married with 2 or 3 kids, and then you'll know what busyness is really like. Just to leave off with a couple of quotes to think about from Brigham Young, his educator. He says, so we might as well get used to it. We might as well get in the habit. And he talks about education as a habit, right? And we need to get used to it, because what we're going to be doing in the next life is we're going to be learning, right? As long as your health will allow it, push yourself, drive yourself. You see, students don't do that. They never think of endangering their health anymore. And I'm not advocating for that. That's kind of extreme. But the idea of pushing yourself is what he's trying to get at. Well, unless you're endangering your health, you're not doing a good job at all. Again, I don't agree with that, but I do agree with pushing yourself, right? Every 7 years, I go away from BYU on sabbatical, and I have to learn all over again what studying is like. We haven't the remotest conception around here what studying is like. Students will not push themselves. They will not exert themselves. I've never heard of anyone breaking down his or her health studying at the BYU. But it's quite normal at good institutions. You push yourself to the limit. And again, I'm not suggesting that you should, have a breakdown in the middle of the semester. But are we doing enough? Are we taking advantages of the resources the Lord has provided us with in order to, magnify our responsibilities and in order to do our best, right? Something to think about. And then just to kind of close off here, he says, we have the privilege of learning the arts and the sciences that the learned among the Gentile nations understand. I think that, to me, is important, that idea of privilege. We have a privilege of learning the arts and sciences. And I know sometimes as you're in your college classes, it might not feel like a privilege. It might feel more like an obligation, or it might feel like a duty, or it might feel like a prison, or whatever the case may be. But I want you to think about why he says that it's a privilege, and what might you do in your life to kind of think about that maybe a little bit differently as a privilege? Something to help you with that is this statistic. Only 6.7% of the world's population have a college degree. So that means about 93% don't, right? And so you are in the top 6% of the world. And so a lot of people just don't have access to the resources that you're going to have access to. And so then the question is, what are you doing with those resources? What are you doing with the blessings the Lord's given you with, right? So try to take advantage of that, right? That's my encouragement to you. And then only 33% of all Americans have a college degree. And so again, you're in the top 33% of the U.S., right? So one thing to think about is removing that entitlement mentality of I'm here and everything should be for me and my benefit. To really think about having more of a humble attitude towards education, I think helps us to appreciate it and see it a little bit differently. He says, we should cease to be children and become philosophers, understanding our own existence. It's the purpose and ultimate design. Then our days will not become blank through ignorance, right? So it's interesting that he says that we should become philosophers, right? What do philosophers do? They dig down deep and they think about what's the meaning of life and why we're here, right? And I want you to think about how this quote might relate to the ideas presented in Bartholomew's song. In what ways did he become somewhat of a philosopher? what ways did he change, and how can we kind of think about that change, not in the negative way of stabbing people, but in a positive way of trying to then go out and to help others and to share that knowledge and to be agents that we can act for ourselves. And I want you to think about, what does Nibley indicate will happen if we do not rigorously study these things, right? He says, Brigham Young says, or at least Brigham Young says this, that these truths are going to be taken away from the world too in our time. If we don't look out, we can lose these things. We can lose the beauty. We can lose the ideas that have really made us who we are in the 21st century. He says, Glenn Seberg says, was worried about computers because they're crippling our minds. We're not remembering anything. We're not thinking anymore. And I want you to think about whether that's true, whether computers have kind of replaced our ability to think for ourselves, and maybe we're just kind of becoming a little bit in some small ways like Bartholomew, and just becoming actors that are acted upon by whatever media is filling our minds. And so what I'm going to try to do within this class, within the humanities, is to get you to think about how ideas can influence us. What are the meaning? What's the significance behind them? Just to close here, I want you to leave you with this quote by a group of researchers who study education. Their name are Ryan Moss and Moss. And this is what they say about the problem with colleges, right? Some of the challenges that the college classroom faces. And this gets back to the initial quote that I shared with you from the law professor, right? About some of the problems that are around college campuses today. He says, the problem that colleges and universities face today is that students leave high school unprepared for the ensuing rigor of college. In some ways, law students are kind of facing this as well. They might be leaving college underprepared. In general, they have not been challenged and arrive with poor reading and writing skills. Second, they have no self-knowledge and as such do not have appropriate and practiced level of motivation and discipline. They are woefully lacking in skills and fail when faced with time constraints. They arrive to class on the rare occasion that they do show up unprepared and cluttered. And so one thing that I'm going to try to help you focus on this semester is to focus on how to study, to focus on what things to kind of think about as you approach your reading assignments or lectures, how to kind of shape your studies with that, and then to get you to think more kind of moving beyond that, to think about what it means and how that applies to you. And one parting question that I have or one thought just to kind of leave you with is, what can you do to make sure that this quote does not describe you, right? So there's something to kind of think about as we move forward.